Hi guys, and welcome back to SwitchUp. Today we have our buy, avoid or wait for a sale list, and there are some really nice games and some definite avoids here. A big thanks to all of you who have subscribed to the channel. We've seen a big influx in the last couple of months, and we're heading towards that 60,000, which is amazing. So without further ado, let's jump into the list. The first game is called The Ninja Saviors Return of the Warriors, and it describes itself as a return to the good old days of beat-em-up action. And there are a lot of similarities to, I think, Glen's favourite game Turtles in Time, in terms of the visuals, which have a lovely style to them as well. There's more than a bit of Streets of Rage and other classic beat-em-ups in here, but it does enough to stand out from the crowd. I believe the game is the successor to Ninja Warriors, which was back on the SNES, with quite a few modern twists, including a lovely visual overhaul. The backdrops here are lovely and quite grand in scale, and the animation is handled really nicely. This one can be had for a quite reasonable physical price as well on the Nintendo Switch, and the addition of 2 new characters to this version, as well as a 16:9 ratio rather than the old 4:3, make this a worthwhile pickup for fans of the genre. Next up is the lovely Megaquarium, which I've really been enjoying. It's essentially an aquarium-based theme hospital. You're tasked with improving or renovating a dilapidated and failing aquarium by bringing in new types of fish species, building new tanks, and then creating an enticing and attractive venue for people to come to. With these types of games, I love it when they include all of the more mundane details, like hiring your staff and being able to see star ratings for those, and trying to decide whether to go for the very expensive good one or the cheap, terrible option. There are dozens and dozens of different species of fish and other animals to fill your tanks, and there's a real strategy in how you combine these within a tank. Some just can't be put together because, well, they'll eat each other. And then there's the quality of the water and maintaining your pumps, as well as trying to make the whole place attractive for visitors. So then comes into play trying to get all the machinery out of sight. I found the game very compelling, and despite the okay visuals, they do the job just fine. The music's good enough, and overall I'd say for the price the game's asking, there really isn't much in the way of competition that doesn't have all of the annoying mobile things in it. There's none of that here at all. It really is an old school style simulation game, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. We have got a few copies of this one to give away, but regardless of that, this is still a buy for me. I enjoyed it a lot. Let me know down in the comments what your favourite simulation game was, and I might just give you a copy of this one. Puzzle Quest is a great series that's been around for ages, and Glen's been playing through the Puzzle Quest The Legend Returns, which came to the Nintendo Switch quite recently. This one's quite cheap, it's about £14 and includes 100 all new quests, bringing this version up to over 230 different quests to play through. They have supposedly remastered this for the Nintendo Switch, but I can tell you that performance isn't always completely perfect here, but thankfully it's all about the gameplay with this one, and as always it's solid. There are 5 new classes, and it includes the Challenge of the Warlords, Revenge of the Plague Lord, and a brand new expansion called Attack on the Golem Lord. This is a match-free puzzler if you're completely new to the series, but with the magic system and questing in there as well, there's far more to it than meets the eye. It's actually incredibly deep. For Glen, this is an absolute definite buy. At £14, it's really a bargain on the Nintendo Switch. Next up, we have Ice Age Scrats Nutty Adventure from Outright Games, and despite that almost risque title, this is a standard 3D platform adventure game. You take on the role of Scrat, probably my favourite character from the Ice Age series, on his quest for the crystal nuts. This really reminded me of playing old school Nintendo 64 games in the best possible way, really. It's all about that platforming action. You do have a range of offensive moves, including the ability to throw nuts at enemies, but what I would say is that the overall feel of the game is quite dated. There's no huge amount of challenge here. The platforming is actually quite decent. The visual performance isn't stellar. It's probably going around about 30 for most of the time, but there are definite chuggy moments where it dips right down. If you're looking for a very, very child-friendly game for your children though, this might be one to consider on sale, as I quite literally haven't been able to tear my daughter away from this and Cat Quest since it got installed on the Switch. Okay, this brings me on to Ultra Off-Road Simulator 2019 Alaska, and in our upcoming series I said that the visuals didn't quite look okay, but then on the trailer it looked semi-decent. I've been playing through this one and I can tell you I was right to begin with. I'm sorry, it's a horrible game to play. I didn't enjoy this one at all. The physics in comparison to something like Spin Tires, Mud Runner are just night and day. Your vehicle will randomly flip over and spin all over the place, and thankfully it has a lovely mechanic whereby it will just flip you back upright. No need to use a winch or anything like that. It feels very much like an old PlayStation 2 game, and not a particularly good one, I'm afraid. You're dropped straight into the game where there are floating pickups and the vehicle just doesn't feel like it's attached to the ground. I really hate to say it, but for me this is an avoid. Dusk Diver, brought to the Nintendo Switch by P-Cube, is essentially their answer to Persona. It's an anime-style beat-em-up action game where you play as Yumo, a high school girl, and she fights alongside guardians against phantoms who have invaded this realm. The combat here is rather simplistic. Think something like a Dynasty Warriors title and you're not going to be too far off. It's fun enough, but it can begin to feel a little bit hollow. I think the main thing with the game is that it's more than the sum of its parts. It's got a real style about it, and while the story isn't anything to write home about, for fans of this type of game, fighting in those famous Taipei locations feels very cool indeed. Overall, the visual style is quite clever. They take seemingly more dull location settings and just include enough colour to make everything pop out of the screen. The motion and combat feel solid, and while it's certainly not going to give Persona a real run for its money, it does more than enough to keep a new player engaged. It's perhaps a tad expensive, particularly considering the great number of amazing games at the moment on the Switch, so for me this would be a wait for a slight sale. Next up is a small title from a French developer called Yuri. It's a platform game that describes itself as having a unique atmosphere, and it's launching with a hefty 30% discount, bringing it down to around about £7. You begin your adventure by travelling along on a bed with wheels, and you can swing from vines, parachute down using the bed sheet, and the whole game's got a lovely pace to it. Strangely, it kind of reminds me of a Sonic title in terms of the rhythm of play. It's been made over 6 years by 3 brothers and has a very beautiful art style. The game's literally only just releasing on the Switch, so I'd say it's probably a bit too early to say it's a hidden gem, but I worry that it will remain hidden, and it shouldn't. It's a lovely game to play. It's very simple, but it's very enjoyable. Everything in the world has physics-based properties, so as you're travelling over vines, they might dip down and gradually sink, and you'll need quick reactions to jump from platform to platform without falling to the depths of the water. If you do die, it's very quick back into the action and you'll respawn from literally just where you died. The difficulty certainly ramps up as you progress, so there is more than enough here. It's not just a kid's game. I wholeheartedly recommend this, and even if you've just got a few coins left on your Switch account, consider picking it up. Pig Eat Ball. Where do I begin? This game is absolutely incredible. It's like arcades have come back and have jumped into your Nintendo Switch. It's such a compelling game. You get larger as you eat, and then as you vomit out the things you've eaten, you'll shrink back down, allowing you to squeeze through certain gaps, but you've got to eat everything on the level. So there is a bit of strategy here as well. It sounds absolutely insane, but it's so compelling. The king has devised the Royal Games, in which the winners will marry Princess Bo. Since she can't talk her father out of it, Bo decides to put on a disguise and enter the competition herself, so that's who you play as. There are some massive boss fights in here as well. It might look terrible, but I promise you the gameplay here is astounding. This is a definite buy from me. It's about £12, which is slightly on the more expensive side, but I just can't recommend it enough. A brilliant game, absolutely brilliant, and one that just clicks perfectly with my slightly unusual brain. If you're one of those people that likes things like the Mighty Boosh, this one is going to be right up your street. Destiny Connect Tick-Tock Travelers is another NIS title that I was really keen to play. It's an okay game, but it just doesn't really do much to separate itself from the competition, which are essentially much better. The combat is decent enough, but the actual world you inhabit, it's just a touch too small in my opinion, which is a real shame because I love the visual style of it. There's also absolutely no speaking here, which when you line it up against a game like, hell, any of the recent RPGs on Switch that have had full voice acted casts, it doesn't really hold up. It might sound like I really didn't enjoy the game, and that's not the case really. I did enjoy it, I just wanted a little bit more out of it. If it was on a deep sale, maybe a 50% plus, then it would be a pickup, but yeah, I'd say wait for a sale.
大切な人たちを守るためにシェリーは止まりません。彼女の勇気と優しさは過去と未来とをつなぎ直す原動力となるのでしょうか。それとも
I think many people might write off A Knight's Quest as just another indie copy of a Zelda title, but it's actually quite a big action-adventure set in an open world. There's a large cast of characters and yeah, I mean, there are some clunky mechanics here and some of the movement just smacks of indie development, but they've really tried their very best to create something worthwhile, and I personally think they've achieved it. There are some huge boss fights and some mechanics that you wouldn't usually find in this style of game, like wall running, grinding and leaping through vast areas. It's certainly not perfect and the combat feels a little stunted at times, but if you persevere past the initially slower section, which is essentially a tutorial, the world opens up and there's actually a decent game here. For me, I would say it's a wait for a sale, but it's a good game. Let me know down in the comments if you'll be picking up any of these ones, and as always, for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya! A big thank you to our patrons who support the channel each and every month, the names of which are on the screen right now. If you want to join them, then all the links will be down below.